boys and girls. This is Pastor Jordan, and I'm excited. Easter is just in the next couple of weeks, and as you know, we are walking through what Jesus went through before he went to the cross. He laid down his life for my sins, for your sins. Then he was buried, and on the third day, he arose triumphant over death, over the grave, and that's what we celebrate for Easter. Remember last week we talked about Jesus's triumphal entry. He goes into the city of Jerusalem with his disciples, and he's riding in on a... Wait, what was he? Was it an elephant? No, that's not it. A lion. That's what it... No. It was a donkey. He rode in on a donkey into Jerusalem for the feast of the Passover. That's right. For the Feast of the Passover. And it's interesting that we talked about Jesus riding in on a donkey that never had been ridden by a human before. He rode in on this lowly donkey into Jerusalem for the Feast of the Passover. He makes his way to the temple, and people come to be healed, and Jesus heals them in the temple. Then Jesus has children gather around him, and they sing praises to Jesus. And remember, we talked about man looketh on the outward appearance, but what does God look at? God looks on the heart. And so we talked about how Jesus saw that these children truly meant what they were saying when they were praising Jesus. Well, that brings us to where we are for this story. As Jesus, later that night, it's dinner time, he goes to the Last Supper with his disciples. It's the last night that Jesus will ever be on the earth, as he has his last meal there with his disciples, and he's gathered around, he's talking with his disciples. But then, as the night goes on and it gets later at night, do you guys ever stay up late? I'm sure you go to bed at 9 o'clock on the dot. Well, Jesus and his disciples, it was late at night. And Jesus knows, because he's God, remember, God knows everything. Jesus knew that he was about to be betrayed. He knew that he was about to have to lay down his life. Why? Well, for your and my sin, so that we could spend eternity in heaven with him. But before Jesus goes and lays down his life, he takes his disciples to a garden. Pastor Jordan, why does he take them to a garden? He takes them to the Garden of Gethsemane so that he can pray. Jesus wants to pray to God the Father before he goes and pays for the sins of the entire world. He wants to talk to his Father. And so he takes his disciples through this Garden of Gethsemane very, very late at night, and he takes 3 of his disciples, Peter, James, and John. And he takes them off to the side, and he says, I want you guys to stay here. He gives them 2 simple commands: stay and pray. Pretty easy, right? Stay and pray. Jesus, he said, oh, my heart, it's exceedingly sorrowful. Jesus' soul, he was troubled. Why was he troubled? He knew he was about to have to go through a lot of pain. He knew that he would be tortured. He knew that he would have to lay down his life and become sin and die for your and my sins. And so Jesus, he's very sorrowful. And he asked these 3 disciples, hey, can you stay here and pray with me? I need you to comfort me. And he goes off just a little ways and he begins to pray. And Jesus says this. He says, Father, please, if this cup can pass from me, yet not my will, but your will be done. What did Jesus mean by that? Well, Jesus was saying, you know that Jesus, he's 100% God, but he's also 100% human. And the human part of Jesus was asking the Father, he was saying, Father, please, if there's any way for man to be redeemed from his sin, if there's any other way, please let it happen. Yet, Father, I know, because he's 100% God, he knew that there was no other way that you and I could go to heaven and spend eternity with Jesus unless Jesus laid down his life. And so Jesus says this, he says, not my will, but yours be done. And Jesus prays a little while, and he gets up and he goes back to Peter, James, and John, and he says, he finds them, and what are they doing? He tells them to stay and pray. What are they doing? They're sleeping. But Jesus wakes them up. He says, could you not wait with me and pray for just a